Eastern Europe. For the most part, Eastern European countries have had trouble. Now, I had a young woman from Yugoslavia a few years back, took offense that she said Yugoslavia is prospering and doing well. Perhaps so, but they have not, their standard of living has not come up to the standard of living of that of Western Europe or the United States. They, but nevertheless, maybe they're doing better than some of them. A lot of the Eastern European countries that were once under communism are having a really difficult time. They've tried to become part of Europe. They've joined in Europe's unification and joined the European Union. But again, not everybody is convinced that European Union is a good thing. I'll talk more about European Union in a few minutes, just in a couple pages. But I do want to mention Yugoslavia. For many years, a man named Tito had ruled Yugoslavia. He was communist, but he held all the various factions in Yugoslavia together. He kept the Muslims happy as much as could be, the Eastern Orthodox Christians, the Roman Catholic Christians, very diverse population there. He held them together. Inevitably, he did not last forever, though. He died. When he died, Yugoslavia splintered. Now, along the scene came a man named Milosevic. Let me see if I can figure out how to... Anyways, Slobodan Milosevic, oh yeah, Slobodan Milosevic, M-I-L-O-S-E-V-I-C. Now, folks, I'm going to sum up in a nutshell. The Muslims living in his group were practicing terrorism, and he decided he was going to practice equal terrorism right back, and he did what you call ethnic cleansing. And this reminded the people too much of the Holocaust. Basically, he killed every Muslim he could get his hands on, destroyed them. So the rest of Europe rose up and put him down. He was put on trial for war crimes, but it took a while to get the trial. In the meantime, he contracted cancer and died in prison in 2006 without ever having to stand trial for his crimes. Again, you can sometimes somewhat justify, I mean, just say, well, wasn't he trying to combat terrorism? Yes, but the world doesn't let him combat terrorism in that manner. So troops from the United Nations, actually troops from the European Union, the United Nations wouldn't touch it. The United Nations was afraid to deal with it, so NATO moved in, and the European Union moved in, and they ousted Milosevic, and the troops from the European Union are still there. Now, if the United States didn't get involved, the United States sent in a few troops. None of our troops were killed. We kept kind of kept our troops out of harm's way. But nevertheless, the troops served as a deterrent to keep these warring factions away from each other's throats. A big issue that came up during this, Bill Clinton was president, and Bill Clinton was going to send American troops under NATO commanders, which was something that our presidents had refused to do when we got involved in European wars, and this created quite a stir and quite a controversy. Eventually, they agreed not to send American troops and put them under NATO commanders. American troops would be under American commanders. Now, as for Russia, essentially what I want you to remember is that Russia is under the control of Vladimir Putin. Supposedly Putin could not stand for re-election under Russia's new constitution, but he became prime minister. And for all practical purposes, Putin is running the country, as he has since he was first elected president. Vladimir Putin is obviously making a whole lot of news today. Now, this is something your book does not mention, but he has dreams of rebuilding the Soviet Union, and he plans to take back one state at a time, the countries that broke away from him, even if he can only take part of them. And right now, he's heavily involved in the Ukraine. Essentially, the Crimea was given to Ukraine by Nikita Khrushchev many years ago, back in 1956. The Crimea was given to Ukraine, and now the people in the Crimea say they want to rejoin Russia and become Russian once again. And they voted in an election overwhelmingly to become Russian. The United States is siding with Ukraine and most of Europe. And then Ukraine did something that should scare us badly, folk. Ukraine said that all Jews living in Ukraine must register. Now, why should that scare us? Number one, it reminds us too much of Adolf Hitler. He had all Jews in his country register also, and it was setting them up for the big slaughter, the Holocaust. And two, the fact that the United States is on the side of the Ukraine might mean that the United States, for the first time in my lifetime, maybe the first time, in my opinion, in my lifetime, that the United States is on the wrong side of the issue. That the Russians are right, the United States and Western Europe is wrong. And being wrong, we may wind up taking the consequences, and I don't dare speculate what those consequences will be. Anyway, this is very, very much in the present, very much in the news still, and I don't dare predict what the outcome will be. All right, anybody need more time to look at your test? If not, please, I'll come around and I'll take them up. Let's see. I'd like to have these back in case I teach here again. Okay. All right. Now I will say this. I mean, when I was in college, I usually keep up with the news, but then during my college years, I quit because I had to study and just didn't take the time for it. I don't know how much any of you are aware of what's going on right now in the Ukraine and involving the Crimea and involving the United States and Russia. Again, it reminds me a whole lot of the Cold War. All right. For right now, though, I'll leave it and talk about European Union. There was an attempt made when I was a kid to unify Europe. It was called the European Common Market. The Common Market lasted a few years and then gave way to another attempt. But the bottom line is, we now call it the European Union or the EU. It's an attempt to form what you might say is the United States of Europe, European Union, and they have formed together to get a common currency called the euro. And a lot of nations have joined. They joined forces and now trade in euros. And if any of you ever go to Europe, you'll probably exchange your American dollars for euros. The exchange rate varies greatly from time to time. Now, your book was written before some of the more recent problems with the European Union. Here's a problem they have with the Union. Number one, they don't all have the same language. In other words, at least in the United States, most of us, until recently, spoke English. In Europe, they don't speak the same language. But also, you have a big economic gap. The euro has been hurt by a group of nations which some people refer to as the pigs. PIIGS. Those nations are Portugal, Ireland, the G is Greece and Spain, Italy. Yeah, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Those nations have pulled down the value of the euro because what you have, particularly in the case of Greece, the Greeks spend a lot of time on vacations. In fact, the Greeks set up a socialistic system where everybody can retire at age 51. They get 6 to 8 weeks vacation a year. In the meantime, the Germans are industrious people who don't take that long of vacations and who work more of their lifetime. You might ask, what's wrong with retiring at 51? Well, simply this: when you retire that young, somebody else has to work to support you. I mean, in the meantime, just about a year ago, the Swiss they had on the ballot to raise their vacations from 4 weeks to 6. And they voted more than 60% against raising their vacation time from 4 weeks to 6. Well, anybody have any, what's wrong with taking a 6 weeks vacation? It should be, I mean, it's okay if you can afford, if the country can afford it. But basically, though, you're not working, and you're getting paid for not working. I mean, everybody, they should have vacations. But if you take too much vacation time, it means the persons who are working have to pay you while you're not working. And the result is an economic downturn. Now, again, the Swiss can afford 4 weeks. 6 weeks, even they turned it down. Again, they're wiser people than the Greeks. The Greeks wound up actually, a lot of persons have said that the European Union made a mistake when they took Greece in. That they knew that Greece had economic problems. That Greece is a small country, it's the land of Socrates. We can help solve their problems. Well, Greece winds up going practically bankrupt. And then Italy starts to go bankrupt. Then Portugal is having trouble. Spain is having trouble. I didn't realize you still had euros. And Ireland has trouble, and the result is, hey, it pulls the more industrious nations down. In the meantime, Germany is having problems. If Germany had never reunited with East Germany, they'd be better off. But they reunited with their somewhat non-productive East German fellow citizens, with a result that has pulled them down also. All right. And again, your book will mention how a lot of people are against the European Union. Your book says that the European Union wound up taking in a whole bunch of countries that had once been under communism. When it took in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia. Czechoslovakia broke up into 2 countries, one of them called Slovakia, Slovenia. Then they wound up taking Bulgaria and Romania, also 2 former communist countries. So they're trying to unite, and they have a much bigger population now than the United States.